I'm going to start out with a landing page test that I ran. I'm going to have you guys look at this. This is for a, well, it's not even important. What I want you guys to do is I want you guys to look at the two designs here. And I want you guys to just guess which one you think performed better. Which one do you think got more form completions? So if you think the one on the left, the green version, got more conversions, raise your hand. Okay. If you guys think the one on the right, the blue version, got more conversions, raise your hand. Okay. Overwhelming majority. I am with all of you that thought that the blue one was going to perform better. However, when we ran the test, the green one performed better, almost 14% better. So the question that I ask myself when I see tests like this is why? Why did that happen? It doesn't look better, right? I mean, all of you who are in any kind of design function, and everyone kind of thinks they're a designer at heart, but anyone who's in any kind of design function thinks that that one on the left looks terrible. The colors don't really look nice together. The one on the right is definitely more of a best practice landing page, right? And so when I look at results like this and I start asking that question of why, one thing that continues to come, so I've been in the conversion rate optimization space now for about 8 years, and time again, I've ran over 1,000 A/B tests at this point. And one thing that has become glaringly obvious to me is it is impossible to predict what is going to work best on an email, on a landing page, on a website, and thus the need for A/B testing. And so what I'm going to talk through today is I'm going to go through 6 things that you should be testing on every email, landing page, website that you have. I'm going to show you guys a bunch of examples of tests that I've run to give you some ideas. And I'm going to go through just really kind of 6 things that comprise your emails and your landing pages that will create a great experience for your audience. And then, like I mentioned, at the end, we're going to go through some low-hanging fruit for both e-commerce and lead gen. I'm going to talk through just a couple of tips and some things that I think you guys should be doing if you're not. So the 6 things that we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about how to make sure you're creating a great value proposition on your landing pages, on your emails, and what that means. We're going to talk about the call to action. How do you make sure that you are creating the right call to action for your emails, your landing pages? We're going to talk about content. This is content marketing world. We have to have that in there, right? We're going to talk about, specifically with content, how much content do people want? Because it's really easy to just barf all of our content all over our users. We're going to talk about distractions that are conversion killers. We're going to talk about things that can cause anxiety and how you can overcome anxiety for users. And then we're going to talk about the mobile experience, which is something that, I mean, that's a buzzword that gets thrown around, but we're going to talk specifically about things that you should think about on your mobile. So let's talk about value proposition first. A few questions that I want you to ask yourself when you're thinking about value proposition is, what exactly is it that you're offering? Now, that could be, what is your company offering? But what I want you to think about is when you're crafting an email or creating a landing page, what is your offer for that email? What is your offer for that landing page? What exactly is it? How is it different or unique? You might think about that in terms of your competition. And then finally, I ask, do you know with data which value proposition resonates with your audience? Which one creates a response in people? Now, most often when I ask businesses, do you know which value proposition resonates? The answer that I get back almost always is yes. And I'll say, how do you know? And people will say, well, we've talked to our audience, or we've talked to our customers. You know, especially entrepreneurs. I talk to my customers. I know my customers really well, and they've told me this and this and this and this. Well, there was an interesting study that was done by Harvard years ago that found that 90% of purchase decisions, and this is true for non-purchase related decisions as well, but 90% of conversion related decisions are subconscious. Okay? So what that means is, when you are asking your audience, why did you buy my product? Why did you sign up for my service? You're getting 10%. You're getting the 10% that people are aware of. So when you are figuring out, you need data that proves that a specific thing resonates with your audience. Because if all you have is word of mouth, you've missed the vast majority of the case. And so finally, this is a fun little economics principle here, but somebody's motivation to convert on your website is equal to the perceived benefit minus the perceived cost. The perceived benefit is what can you do for them. That's your value proposition. So value proposition is all about increasing the perceived benefit to your user, and there's lots of perceived costs. Okay? If you are selling a product, there is the cost of the product. There's the hassle of going through your website and figuring out how to buy it. There is the hassle of potentially returning the product. If you're a service-based business, it's the potential nightmare they might have to go through talking to you on the phone and getting your emails, or text messages. It's the amount of time and mental effort that they have to expend to read all of your content and to watch your videos and all that stuff. There's lots of perceived costs. And so it is incumbent upon us as marketers to make sure that we justify all of those costs with the value. All right. So let's show some examples so that I can show you guys what I'm talking about here. So every test that I run has a question associated with it. This allows us to learn something from every test we run. So here's an example of a question, and I like to have all of my test questions be an open-ended question, because that guarantees that I will learn something from every test I run. Even if my idea, my hypothesis fails, I still have learned something like, how should we format a value proposition in the email headline? Okay? This is the only example I have of email headlines, because I know those of you who do, how many of you guys do email, by the way, in this room? Almost all of us. Okay, so I'm sure that you guys have read more articles and heard more presentations than you can handle on email headlines. And so I am going to talk about one example, though, that will just kind of show what I'm talking about with value proposition. So here's an example of, and I've got an arrow pointed here so you can see specifically the email headline that I'm talking about. Here's an example of a headline, and headlines have to be chock full of value proposition. Because if this determines whether or not someone's even going to open your email, right? The headline is really all somebody has to go on when they're deciding whether or not to open your email. And so if they can't figure out, what am I going to get from opening this email, they're not going to click on it. Okay, so here's an example of an email headline that has just, some quick information. Many of you join us for our pre-launch weekend. The email headline's actually a lot longer than that, but that's all you can see on mobile, right? So on the control, that's what we had, right? Now, on the variation, what we did is we really just simplified that second headline. So instead of saying, join us for our pre-launch weekend, we said, pre-launch weekend, and then look at this. We can fit in another value proposition in there that says quality homes, right? So we basically, all we did is we simplified and we added something. This resulted in a 74% increase in opens of this email. Massive, massive increase in people opening an email just because they were able to determine a little bit more, what is the value I'm going to get from this? It gives a little bit more context to the email or to what the subject or the content of the email is going to have. And ultimately, it resonates more with the audience. So when we're thinking about value propositions, when we're thinking about what value propositions to put in the body of our email, in the body of our landing page, it's just as important what you have in there as it is the format that you have. Because, again, you could write a ton of value propositions that are super long, but typically people can only consume a little bit, and this email headline is a great example of that. Here's another example. What value propositions should we highlight in our reviews? Okay, so this is a company that had video reviews on their website, and video reviews are awesome, they're cool, but next to the video review, the company had pulled out a little snippet from the video, okay, some text that they had put on the site. Now, when I kind of proposed this test initially, the client said, well, it doesn't even matter. They're just going to watch the video, so why does it matter what we put next to it? And I said, I'm going to guess that it matters, but let's find out. So what we wanted to test is, what should we actually pull out of the video? This is a value proposition, right? This is, those people in the video have said a value proposition. Now, in this case, it's I would call this a marketing fluff value proposition. This actually, let's see. So I think that I put the wrong one in here. Let me see if it's next. Nope. Okay, so this is supposed to say, this is an amazing company. We loved working with them. One of the variations that we tested that was on the control here that I messed up says, is more focused on the amount that somebody saved by working with this company. Okay, so we went from a fluff message, and I think I have it on the last slide here so that you guys can see what it said. But instead of just saying this is an amazing company, we focused on a money amount savings. Right? Second variation that we tested, this is for a company that sells houses online. This one talked about how quickly you could sell your house or how quickly you could get showings. All right, so the value proposition here is the speed at which you can get people interested in your home. The third one was talking about quality of service. They mentioned a story in here where they reached out to their lawyer at 11 p.m. and the guy picked up the phone. All right, so we tested all of these. Now you can see the original one, amazing technology, amazing people. That's the one I should have had on the first slide. Okay, so I'm just going to have you guys look at these real quick and guess which one you thought performed the best. The one that ultimately ended up performing the best was the one that mentioned the story here. So I thought that the money savings one was going to win because, well, I mean, money, that's a big cost, right? And so saving a lot of money I thought, was going to be the most important thing to people. But when we ran this test, and look at this. So remember, if you remember what I said, the company said, it doesn't matter what we put next to the video. They're just going to watch the video. Well, look at this. We got 26% more conversions, more signups, just by changing the snippet that we pulled out of a video. So what that means is that what we put on our website does matter. What it also means is there's probably a lot of people that weren't actually even watching the video. Or if they were, their frame of reference for that video was the content that we had put on the page. And so we had now framed this around the quality of the experience instead of whatever they were thinking before, amazing company, and they were looking for some justification of that. So it matters. What we push, in terms of the value proposition, what we are highlighting on our site for our value propositions makes a huge difference. And think about this also. If you ran this test and you got this data back that said, okay, we know that the quality of our service and the personal experience that people have with our brand is what matters, how do you think that would influence the rest of your marketing? How would that influence the way that you write content? How would that influence the way you post on social media? How would that influence your ad copy? Right? And so gathering this kind of data from your audience and finding these kinds of things out has a huge impact on our overall strategy, or at least it should. So I'm gonna skip past this slide, but just some questions to ask yourself if you were to look at an email or a landing page are the following. So I'm going to move on to call to action. So here's an example. These are my two beautiful daughters. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And we took them to do family pictures. So we wanted our daughters to take some cute pictures together. Well, what we wanted them to do is we wanted them to stand there and smile. Okay? Now, this is an adorable picture, right? I mean, I wouldn't put it on here if it wasn't adorable. This is an adorable picture, but this is not what we wanted this is not what we wanted our daughters to do. And the reason that this is the response that we got, the reason this is what we had happen is we said, just stand there and act like you guys love each other. Okay? Now, what I should have said is, put your arm around her and smile. I should have been very obvious and straightforward with what I wanted them to do. And kids are amazing examples of online behavior. Because with kids, if you don't tell them exactly what you want them to do, then they're going to leave it all to their own interpretation. They're going to make up their own thing. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about in terms of call to action. With call to action, we need to be telling our audience exactly what we want them to do. Okay? A bad call to action is something like, start living your life today, right? That's not a call to action. That's up to their interpretation. What does that even mean, right? A great call to action is get your free life insurance audit today, right? So you want to tell people exactly what you want them to do. One way that I like to think about this is in terms of the 2-second rule. So other psychological studies have been done on user behavior online, and they found that when somebody goes to a new website that they've never been to before, they usually give 2 to 3 seconds to determine whether or not they're in the right spot before they bail. So most of your bounces, when somebody comes to your site and then leaves, most of your bounces happen in 2 to 3 seconds. And so it is critical that in those 2 to 3 seconds, somebody can identify what they're supposed to do. Why is that important? It's not because they're going to take action in 2 to 3 seconds, because most people will not take action and convert in 2 to 3 seconds. But what it does for us is psychologically, when I know what I'm supposed to do, it feels nice. I feel like I've got my crap figured out, right? It's reassuring that I know that I'm not being, it's not a bait and switch kind of thing. It's not like I'm asking you to read all of my content and then I'm going to ask you to sign up for a timeshare, right? I mean, it's like, so in 2 to 3 seconds, somebody should be able to figure out what they should do on your website. And one easy way of doing that is to use color contrast. So designers love to use colors that all blend together and look nice together, right? Designers like to use blues and lots of white space and, neutral colors. You do not want your call to action to be a neutral color. Your call to action should stand out. It should be glaringly obvious to people what they should do on your site. Because again, it helps psychologically reassure people that they know what to do.